Good day, I'm Stephen McHugh, and this is your JIS News for Wednesday, July 3. Prime Minister Andrew Holness is encouraging Caribbean leaders to prepare their territories for the effects of climate change, pointing to the extremely high temperatures being experienced across the region, as well as last year's active hurricane season. Mr. Holness has urged regional heads to consider financial instruments such as catastrophe bonds to support recovery. The Prime Minister has also called for greater coordination and investments in assets to respond to and recover from climate change.
So we can't keep looking for outside of the region to be able to respond. So we have to make investments in our offshore vessels, in our airlift capacity, in our storage capacity, and in making arrangements prior to the events. Certainly in terms of where our response will be located, where our stocks of goods are located.
Prime Minister Holness was speaking on Saturday at a breakfast luncheon in celebration of the 60th anniversary of the first written constitution of the Cayman Islands. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister is now in St. Lucia for the 40th regular meeting of the Conference of Heads of Government of the Caribbean Community, CARICOM. Among the areas of discussions are regional security, Venezuela, blacklisting, and Small Island Developing States Resilience Foundation. During the session, Jamaica is expected to sign a Memorandum of Understanding with CARICOM to support the operationalizing and institutionalizing of the CARICOM Results-Based Management System Phase 2. Prime Minister Holness is supported by Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith, as well as other representatives from that ministry and OPM Press Secretary Naomi Francis. During the Prime Minister's absence, Minister of National Security Dr. Horace Chang will be in charge of the government. The Prime Minister will return to the island on Saturday, July 6. The Income Tax Amendment Act 2019 was approved by the Senate on Friday, making allowance for the purchase and renovation of industrial buildings for trade. Amendments to Clause 6 make provision for purchasers to recover 20% on the initial capital expenditure for renovation, but the building must be put to use for the purposes of the trade indicated by the owner within the first 4 years of assessment.
This amendment of the Income Tax Act is expected to encourage investment and development in our country.
According to Minister Pernell Charles Jr., new insertions were also made to recover the initial allowance made to an owner if the contract was not upheld. This action would be warranted if, after 4 years, the building was not in use for the particular type of trade indicated. The 20% allowance could also be recovered if the renovation was not completed or if the capital expenditure for the renovation was less than 80% of the purchase cost of the building.
Let me also note that the reintroduction of the initial allowances granted on capital expenditure incurred on the purchase of these types of building will encourage the purchase and the renovation and the retrofitting of buildings and structures that have become derelict and that are falling into disuse.
Minister of Health and Wellness Dr. Christopher Tufton is assuring the nation that there is currently no outbreak of dengue fever on the island, despite reports in the public sphere.
Since January of this year, when we had the dengue outbreak, when it peaked and started to decline, we have seen a steady decline over those months into May of this year, when we have the last monthly data, which is below outbreak status or threshold based on the way these things are calculated. So there is no dengue outbreak.
Minister Tufton made the point during a recent function at the Noel Holmes Hospital in Lucy, Hanover. On July 1, the Health and Wellness Ministry fully activated its enhanced vector control program in anticipation of increased mosquito breeding in the summer months, including those that carry the dengue virus. And still on health, the Noel Holmes Hospital in Lucy, Hanover is now offering the Compassionate Care Program as part of its services. The program is an initiative by the ministry to improve healthcare services within institutions island-wide. It promotes the psychological well-being of patients within the public health system as a means of encouraging speedy recovery.
The facility today is a nicer facility in terms of infrastructure than it was 3 years ago. And as a consequence, we are hoping that with the addition of the Compassionate Care Program, We'll be adding now the final touches to ensuring that the hospital grows from strength to strength in terms of offering quality care to the patients who are indeed your customers.
To date, 130 members of staff have received training in compassionate care, which Dr. Tufton said would continue. And finally, Jamaica's energy mix is expected to reach 18% of renewables by 2020. This will be a 3% increase, up from 15% in 2018. While making the pronouncement, Energy Minister Favour Williams said the country was using 37% of natural gas, up from 11% in 2018. She also pointed out that petroleum accounted for 45% of energy use, down from 74%. Minister Williams stressed that much was being done to surpass the targets outlined in the National Energy Policy of no less than 20% renewables by 2030.
Our movement along this pathway is to ensure our energy security by utilizing more of our indigenous resources, wind, solar, hydro, waste-to-energy, and to relentlessly push for continued downward movement in electricity prices for all Jamaicans.
Minister Williams provided the update at Thursday's press conference on the Petrojam Strategic Review. And that's it for JIS News Today. I'm Stephen McHugh. Thanks for watching.